sometimes it's good that there's a void, and it allows a long-term solution to be found versus this little, oh, I'll just fill in. We don't want a bunch of fill-ins in life. We want long-term, stable, sustainable solutions. Welcome to The Conscious Investor. Let's get started. Welcome back, Conscious Investor. It's a beautiful Monday, and I am happy to share this space with you. Your week is off already to a great start because you are putting great things in the space between your ears. And when we have control over that space between our ears, boom, we can take the action that is absolutely necessary to build the life that we long for, that we are destined for. Before we dive in to today's mindset episode, we are going to be tackling, remember, this is a series. We're getting, we're almost done with this series, but we're on declaration number 6, and that is, we shall not break integrity. And I'm actually breaking integrity into 2 parts because it is really rich. There's a lot of material in there, and I don't want you to miss out on all the opportunity. So today we're going to be talking about the 6 practices, and I'm going to dive into that in a moment. Next week, we're going to be talking about the 7 temptations. So you're going to want to tune in next week for sure so that you can get the full scope of integrity and you can be just completely bolstered up. But as always, before we dive in, remember that once a week, I love to look at ratings and reviews and just to see if there's any insight from you. And I'm so grateful. I am grateful. I've been talking with Jason from Indiana. He left a 5-star review. He's a new investor to 3 Keys Investments. And we've been talking, just seeing what are his goals and things like that. So it's been awesome actually getting to know Jason and having fun conversations and learning more. And remember that that's what I love to do. 3 Keys Investments is here to support our investors, right? And we can't support our investors if we don't have a relationship, if we don't know what their goals are and where they're headed. And so it's really a fun process of getting to know people. It's not daunting, and we're not asking for blood, DNA, or your firstborn child. But thank you, Jason. He said, very insightful, packed with great content. I found Julie's podcast while listening to another podcast with her as a guest. By the way, I like that podcast that you found me on, and I know that from our conversation. I try to learn something from everyone I can, but Julie exceeded expectations. Her discipline was a breath of fresh air. With so many in real estate pushing the next big deal, it's nice to have just a simple, good deal. I personally enjoyed the episodes with her husband. We all need a team, balance, love, and faith. Community is essential, and she conveys this very well. Anyone can take home something from this to put to good use. I couldn't agree more with the previous reviews. The vibes you bring into the world, the vibe brings you into the tribe. Thanks, Julie, for doing this podcast. Jason, it's been great to get to know you. And thank you so much for leaving a rating and review. Honestly, it means the world to me. And I'm going to ask, if you haven't left an honest rating or review, please do. And even more importantly, if you haven't shared the podcast with someone, I'd love for this podcast to spread like wildfire and to really start a movement to help empower people's lives, to help people know that financial freedom is not equal to personal freedom. And this podcast and this conscious investor movement is really about supporting people in creating that personal freedom in their life. Remember, personal freedom does include financial freedom, but financial freedom doesn't include personal freedom. There's a little nuance there going on. But also in the previous mindset episode, I, made mention that I was going to bring you up to date as to what 3 Keys Investments is actually up to. And I'm going to put this into the beginning of this mindset episode, because when I'm interviewing a guest on a Thursday episode, I really, truly strive. I'm not perfect at it, but I really, truly strive to allow the guest to have all the space to shine. It's really like, I want them to have the focus and the intention more than like, it's not time for Three Keys Investments to shine. It's time for the guests to shine. So I just want to take a moment to bring you up to speed that I've made some really big decisions for Three Keys Investments. Kind of the cool thing about being the CEO, you can make those decisions. And so here's some of the decisions moving forward. And they're really like line in the sand. We're drawing a line in the sand at Three Keys and saying, this is what we're about. And things have become very, very clear as to what we want to invest in and who we want to invest with. And this may fit for you and it may not fit for you. And so it's really important that I communicate this and you can decide for yourself. And so here it is. One, we've decided that we will no longer participate in 506c offerings. Kind of a big deal. We're not going to limit ourselves and restrict ourselves with offerings that are only available to accredited investors. We have found, and we have a 506c offering in our portfolio. And through that process, it really revealed to us that the 506c actually doesn't resonate with the mission, vision, and ethos of Three Keys Investments. Three Keys Investments is here to serve and support all investors in making their first or next deal and placing their investments. And we want to see everyone at whatever financial position they are at, everyone who wants to invest, that has the ability to invest, we want them to be able to invest. So we're going to be sticking to 506b offerings. And that means that we can have accredited investors. By the way, the bonus right now, unless the SEC changes it, is that in a 506b accredited investors, you don't have to be verified. You can self-verify, so you don't have to jump through a lot of hoops. But this also means that so many of you that are in that middle class area that are being squeezed, you're not accredited yet, you are a sophisticated investor. That means that we can actually, you can come into our investments, but you can only come into our investments if and only if we have already had a phone call, a conversation, and we have this relationship where we understand your goals, we understand your knowledge base and your background with investing, and we can support you along the way. It doesn't mean, just that phone call does not mean you're investing with us. It's not a commitment to invest with us, but it opens the door so that we can share our investments with you. If you haven't had that conversation with us, please make sure you go down to the show notes and that you schedule a time for us to talk. I promise you, it's a lot of fun. It's not a weighty conversation, and it really is just a conversation. In fact, I'm not too salesy. I like to get to know you. I can't serve and support you if I don't know what your goals are. And so really, it's just like, hey, I want to learn about you. Let me tell you about Three Keys, and we'll see if it's a right fit for all of us, because it's mutual trust. Remember that limited partners and the active partners, everybody has to be trusting of each other. So we want to make sure that that's established early on. Okay, I think those are the two big announcements. No, that wasn't it. That was kind of a big nutshell one, right? So we're sticking with 506Bs. The other is that we have made a clear line in the sand that we are only going to invest in assets that will provide residences, right? So it's very easy to get shiny object syndrome, especially when you have a really awesome network and you have friends that are in self-storage and friends that are in light industrial and triple net lease and friends that, right? There's so many mobile home parks and RV parks. There's so many different ways to invest within real estate. But really the heart and soul of Three Keys Investments has always been to support residences, to provide a quality place for people to live so that they can feel grounded. And that will create, we believe, an opportunity for people to feel safe, secure, and to show up better within a community. And that will strengthen a community. And so with that, those are two big things. Only 506Bs, and we're only going to be investing in residences. And well, within residences, there are a lot of opportunities. In fact, we're going to be heading out when this airs. We'll probably be in the Midwest looking at some assets there. So you want to make sure you schedule that call so that, when we have something coming up, which it's going to be coming up, I'm sure sooner than later, that you are ready for that, because you don't want to miss out on an opportunity if that's an opportunity that you even are interested in. Right. So You won't know because I can't send it to you unless we have that conversation. All right, here we go. Let's go ahead and dive into integrity. Wow. I mean, as I was going through this, as I read this book, reading through Motivation Manifesto, you just see this discrepancy with integrity in our world, right? And it's like, we just look at leaders, and unfortunately, leadership always trickles down into the populace. And that could be on a micro level within a family. It could be on within a company, or, it is happening within our country. And so integrity is absolutely paramount for us to be aware of and to be cultivating in our lives. And so these are the 6 practices that Brendon Burchard talks about in the Motivation Manifesto. I want to read this quote that he began this 6 practices part with. It says, he writes, "Wisdom is knowing who to be and what to do in a given situation. Virtue is acting on that wisdom." I did pause. I wanted you to have a moment to process. Wisdom is knowing who to be and what to do in a given situation. Virtue is acting on that wisdom. I think that's a really powerful quote. And I thought it was a thunderous way for him to launch into these 6 practices. And we're building ourselves day by day. And when we're building with solid blocks grounded in integrity, we can have the confidence that we are building a life and legacy that is lasting. Here are the 6 practices that he defines, that he puts under integrity. And we'll dive into each of them very briefly. 1, think before we act. 2, never commit to anything where we lack passion. I'll have lots to say on that. 3, keep our word. 4th, always treat others with respect. 5, tell the truth. And 6, always favor action. So let's dive in. Think before we act. All right. So are you running your decisions through the pre-screening process? You want to make sure that those decisions are aligning with your personal well-being, with your relationships, and with your social responsibilities. I'm going to talk to you about this on a personal level. For me, literally, before I make a decision, whether it be for my coaching business, if it's for the investment side of our business, I am actually talking to my husband. Now, those of you who've been listening for a while, conscious investor, I quote unquote fired my husband from my investment company, and he's not in my coaching company. We have very separate companies, very complementary though. And we say that tongue in cheek. It's not that he's bad. It's just, sometimes it works better to be married and to support each other as a married couple. And it does work so much better for us. I think I said that wrong. Did you hear that? Okay, let's just loop that back through the right way. But anyhow, I'm running those decisions by him. Okay, here's a partnership I'm looking at. This is what I'm seeing. And I'm using him as a sounding board because the decisions I make are going to directly affect him. When I think about the commitments I'm making to speaking engagements, those are going to be directly affecting my entire family. It's affecting my life on every single level. And so I need to look at that and take into consideration how many events am I committing to? What does that travel schedule look like? What does that look like for my husband, for my kids? And what's that ripple effect overall look like? In fact, last winter, before Christmas, around the holidays, I was invited to a couple of deals. It could have been really great for you investors. Sorry. But I declined the opportunities. One of them was really, really tempting. People I want to invest with. However, I ran it through that filter and I just no, I've completed a capital raise. I've worked with a deal during Christmas time and during holidays. And this year I'm going to be fully present with my family. And I made that commitment in advance and I stuck with that commitment. When we make those commitments in advance, it makes it easier for us to, take the right action. So number 1, are we thinking things through before we take action? Just as an aside, this is a lot of personal growth on my part because conscious investor, you probably know I love to just dive into the deep end. let's go. Let's bring this about. And so this is years of, really being tempered by life and, really looking for what's the outcome I'm looking for? How's this going to affect everything? So take time to reflect in your own life. Am I thinking before I act? 2, never commit to anything where we lack passion. You have heard me say all the time on the podcast, do what you love, do more of what you love. It's said, I'm looking over at my bookshelf. I can see like 3 different books. The first book I read this in was Super Coach by Michael Neal. And that concept, I'm like, what? Do more of what we love? And Brendon Burchard is kind of affirming this concept of no, follow your passion. Don't be where you don't have a passion. And it's absolutely amazing. For some reason, we feel tethered. We feel bound and obligated to just simply say yes to things, even if it's not in our wheelhouse, even if it's I'll go trail build. Do what you love. Okay. And here's the thing. If we're not following that passion, if we're just kind of going through the motions, we're not going to be fully present, and our full potential is not going to be on the table at the disposal of whatever it is that we've committed to. It is okay to say no, and it does not make you a bad person. And most importantly, that no frees you to say and make your very best yes when that opportunity presents. And remember, whatever spot you're filling, that means somebody else is not in that spot. And so that right person might be missing out on an opportunity that's really important to them. I'm also going to speak to a fellow small town dwellers where maybe there is a need for volunteers in different capacities. Just because there's a need for volunteers, if it's not something that you're passionate about, it doesn't mean that you just go I guess nobody else is doing it. I have to do it. When we step in, we actually stunt the growth and the opportunity. Okay. And so sometimes it's good that there's a void, and it allows a long-term solution to be found versus this little, I'll just fill in. We don't want a bunch of fill-ins in life. We want long-term, stable, sustainable solutions. Okay. So follow, never commit to anything where we lack passion. All right. Number 3, keep our word. Enough said. Whatever you say, do. And this can be tricky. There have been a couple of calls in the last couple of months. I have missed 2 phone calls, and I'm absolutely embarrassed to admit that because it's people's time, it's their energy. They were looking forward to it. There's so many things right there. And that's also breaking integrity. So it's really, I don't take it lightly. So if I missed your call, I don't take it lightly, and I'm really sorry. So whatever you say, whatever you're committing to, do it. If that means that you tell your spouse that you're going to take out the trash, or you're going to pay the bills, or you're picking the kids up, or you're taking the dog to the vet, whatever it is that you are committing to, you do it and you follow through. If it comes to your job and you are committing, I'm going to have these reports to you, or I'm going to have a draft of this written up and presented to you, in 48 hours. Follow through and get it done. So that also goes back to the very first one, right? Think before we take action. So if we're actually thinking before we're taking action, it allows us to keep our word, because now we're not overextending ourselves, and we're able to say, okay, for me, sometimes I'll say, I will get that to you within 24 hours. Sometimes I'll say, I'll get that to you within 48 hours, because I can look at the flow of the next few days. I'm thinking before I'm committing. All right. Next one, always treat others with respect. I love the way Brendon Burchard phrases this. And so I'm going to read you a quote from the section. Giving respect means to not harm. I'm sorry, I didn't type that correctly. Giving respect means to do no harm, to allow others their rights in expressing themselves, and to honor the fact that their own thoughts, feelings, and actions are real and justifiable in their minds, even if we see them as unimportant or wrong. Let me put this another way. Treating people with respect doesn't mean they have the stamp of approval from you. It just simply means that you are seeing people for who they are and where they are at. There are a lot of people where you might not agree with everything I say on the podcast, but you still respect me and I still respect you. I listen to a lot of different podcasts and I engage in so much different content that it stretches me. And it's not always things that I agree with, but I love how it stretches me because I respect the people who are saying it. I'm respecting the intellect that they have and the thoughtfulness with which they're communicating their ideas with and setting forth. And so we can come about this from a position of respect. Giving respect means to do no harm. We can just even stop right there. And that's like, okay, well, if we're harming people, if we are ill-willed toward them, if we are snide and rude or cunning, like just do no harm. Do no harm and receive people for where they are at. Number 6, this is just like such like just obvious. Tell the truth. I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but 0 lies. And I'm going to give you a couple examples. When my kids were little, I read a book to them about lying. And in this book, they talk about a couple types of lies. Cute little kids book. I found it at a used bookstore, and I was so grateful for this collection. And it had to do with like virtues and character. I think it's a whole book on like character development for kids. Really cool books. And I have saved them and stashed them away. Maybe my kids will want them for their kids. I don't know. But there were these lies. It was such a simple way of putting it to kids, right? We have the lie of commission, which is just that bold-faced lie. If you have kids, you have experienced this where they have crumbs all over them or they have stuff in the corners of their lips. And you're like, did you eat the ice cream? Did you eat the chips? And they're like, no. And they're just like bold-faced, like, no, I did not do that. And you're like, all the incriminating evidence is present right here, including the ice cream container beside you. You know, it's like no bold-faced lies. But this is where, and that one is like so obvious, but here's the one that's less obvious. The lie of omission. Just, omitting maybe some important information, like maybe not necessarily being untrue, but you're definitely being misleading. In the book I read to my kids, it was cute. One of the characters, the child in the book, breaks a vase and they sweep it up and put, all the broken parts in the trash, like to just clean it up. And the mom walks by and says like, oh, do you know what happened to the vase? Oh, no, I don't know what happened to the vase. It's like, yeah, you do know exactly. I suppose that could fall under the bold-faced lie. But the point is like, we really need to be careful. Are our words misleading people? This is something I think in the investing space is really important. And I don't mean this like in a harp on anybody type of way, but a lot of times when investors are talking about active investors are explaining tax benefits to passive investors, there's a lot of misinformation that is being spread out there. And so it's really important because it can be misleading. And it's really important to understand like those things for real. Now, in that case, I don't think there's any like ill will, anybody trying to misrepresent anything intentionally, but it's also us being very grounded and clear so that we're not accidentally even misleading people. I know that sounds like, I feel like I kind of muddy the waters a little bit right there. I just take some of these things to heart so much so, especially when it comes to passive investors. Like I really worked hard to get accurate information. By the way, if you want to know about taxes for passive investors, go back and listen to the episode with Brandon Hall. Okay. It'll be the second episode with him. And that will allow you to see like, how do the tax benefits actually really work for passive investors where they are not real estate professionals? It's really important that you understand that. But it's important that we take time to understand things so that we are not accidentally misleading people in any way, shape, or form. All right. Lies are poison. And here's the thing about lying is that you don't feel it initially, but when you tell those little small lies, I know this sounds like I know you're not a child conscious investor, but like sometimes we need this reminder because it's easy even just to say like, oh, how many assets do you have? And to just like, oh, I could just bump that number by like, I don't know, maybe I'll just add 2 or 3 or 5, or, we can just sometimes we can overinflate things. And we don't think anything of it, but that is a lie. That is an untruth. And so being very forthright and candid with people, I guess I'm really using a lot of investing examples, but that's something I've been very, very deliberate about along the way. This is our experience. This is not our experience. This is what we have. This is what we don't have. This is what we are working for. And this is what we're working to, because it's really important that people genuinely understand that you're going to be candid and whether or not you think that's going to be advantageous with somebody or not, you're just going to speak the truth. And I will tell you this, when you speak 100% truth, when you're not watering it down or massaging it in any way so that it feels better to you or maybe sounds better in your opinion to people, you'll sleep so peacefully. And you don't have to constantly look over your shoulder as to like, I don't know, what are they going to think? What are they going to, all of that is just completely erased. It is absolutely beautiful. So I think that when it comes to lying, I think it's that omission part that really kind of is a snarl for people. And so I just want you to be very aware about, what am I saying? And that even could come to like, I'm going to be at your house at 5:00 and you can't make it at 5:00. It's going to be 5:45 before you're at the house for dinner or before you're able to pick your kids up. Like, just be candid and forthright. People would rather know the truth. And most people, it doesn't matter. It's just a matter of just tell me what to expect. Tell me what the truth is so that we can all like make plans and know how we're going to act and behave in this situation. Okay. I think my husband would be like, I think you made your point. Sorry if you're feeling that way, conscious investor. I really feel being truthful and honest is just really so critical and so important, and something that's really important to me. All right. And finally, always favor action. We recently had the Conscious Investor Growth Day. That was me definitely favoring action. Okay. It's like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen in order to get, and I told people along the way, I would tell them, I'm like, you can't get to your second, third, and fourth event until you've done your first one. And you don't know what you don't know until you've actually gone through from start to finish your first event. And so this is just a really important element right here, is that we have to take action. Again, another quote from Brendon Burchard's Motivation Manifesto on this. He says, if we stand doubtful and delayed on the sidelines of life, it's as if we stood at the edge of a river and did not wade in to save a drowning child. I know that is really intense when we look at that, but we don't see the gravity of us being delayed, of being doubtful. And by the way, go back to the episode on slay, doubt, delay, and division, because I dive into that. But, it's like the ramifications of us not taking action are actually more significant and substantial than we can ever anticipate. We wouldn't stand by and let a child drown in the river. And yet we dismiss ourselves. We allow our dreams and our deeper calling in our lives to fail because we fail to take action. We don't allow them to come to life. And the world needs you and your purpose now more than ever before. Everyone needs to be like really leaning into that purpose that we are hardwired and created with. And so this is absolutely paramount that we are taking action. And that doesn't necessarily mean jumping into the deep end. Okay. But taking action, that might look like I'm taking action to take care of my physical well-being. I'm going for a walk for 20 minutes a day. That's not a huge action, right? But it's action. It might mean I'm putting the remote controls aside, over here. So it's not the first thing I see and I don't default and I shift my habit. Small actions lead to great results. And you don't want to ever miss out on what you have to offer the world and the satisfaction, the reward, and the fulfillment that's going to come from you being willing to take action. All right. So there we have it. The 6 practices. Think before we act. Never commit to anything where we lack passion. Keep our word. Always treat others with respect. Tell the truth, and always favor action. Fear will try to stifle you from taking action. Do not listen to fear. I promise you, it will all work out very well. I would also encourage you on that note to listen. Michael Neal has a podcast called Caffeine for the Soul. And there's an episode recently where he talks about I'm going to have to look it up, but I don't know that I have time to do that and get it to you on time. So I will try to throw that in the show notes. And if I don't, just shoot me an email, julie@3keysinvestments.com, and I will send you the direct link. But the nutshell of what he was talking about is he had a couple near-death experiences last year. And so he's now he's not stressed any longer because he's like, well, I almost died. So he's comparing everything to death. And it really gives you this perspective. And having had a lot of death in my life, I've also had that, like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? Like, the world is going to keep moving. And so let's just take action and get it done. All right. Next week, we're going to talk about the 7 temptations that can break our integrity and to help support you in navigating the things that might want to tear you down. Conscious investor, you are awesome. And remember, you're so important to me. And let's not have this be a one-sided relationship. Please make sure, jump on the calendar. If it's a 20-minute, just like, hey, let's just get to know each other, do that. If you're interested in coaching, then jump on the calendar and let's have a 20-minute, like exploring coaching together. And if you have not already looked into our investing, remember 506B, you want to be opting in. So you want to jump on the calendar, schedule a time for us to talk so that you can be on our investor list. Conscious investor, I appreciate you so much more than you realize. If this served you well, please share it with somebody. Until next time, live big, love bigger, and do great things. Are you enjoying this episode? Do the world a favor and help trip the algorithm by leaving a review so that this content reaches many others.